Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Rough Riders, where every week we talk writing, self-publishing, and making it as an author. This week, I am joined by Maiah Lynnette, who is one of the first people who emailed me, actually, and I'm very excited to finally have her on here. So I have a lot of questions for Maiah, but let's start because I think that people are going to learn a lot from her. That's why I'm excited about this one because we're going to be talking a lot about editing. So that's going to be cool for our listeners here, especially indie authors who are just starting out and don't really know what to do when it comes to that. So, hi Maiah, how are you today?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. When you
Of
got back,
course.
he's not even gonna see my message, but I was like, okay.
So I'm glad to finally have you here. I know we've been planning this for a while. And like I said, I'm just going to say it to everyone in case anyone notices. If I look particularly expressionless, it's because I'm a little bit frozen from the Botox I got last week. I do work in aesthetics and plastic surgery. So this is, I get it for free
Little
and
perk.
I'm a little more frozen than I like to be. So but Maiah doesn't have to worry about that because she has the most beautiful skin that I've seen so far. So anyway, let's see everything that I do always ends up branching off into like aesthetic stuff because it's like taken over my life
I,
at this
I
point.
noticed.
So yeah, like if I went into my bathroom's right over there. If I went in there and showed you all my skincare stuff, it's like absurd. Like I've gotten way too obsessive. So let's get back to the actual subject of things and not vanity. But Maiah has done a lot of serial or is working on a lot of like serial publishing on Substack, which is something that I don't know a lot about. But before we get to that, I guess Maiah, if you want to tell us a little bit about your background and kind of how you got your start, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, yeah. So I would say like my it's so funny because I went to so backwards. I went to college originally for like business administration or whatever, and I just was like, I don't want to do this, and but I had to pick a major, and so everybody was like, oh, creative writing, you're a good writer. And people, I don't know, other writers probably hear this all the time. Like, you're a good writer. And you're like, what are you
Mm-hmm,
talking about? Like, what do you mean good writer?
mm-hmm,
And so you had to submit a piece to get into that track. Like it wasn't just automatic. You had to like audition, kind of audition, I guess. And so I submitted something and then they loved it. But like they were like, oh, it's so good, it's so good. But when I reread it, I was like, oh, this is terribly like written, like editing wise, it was terrible. So I asked my professor and she literally was like, oh no, yeah, it was a terrible, like it was terrible. Like you need to like fix so much. But like the contents of the story was amazing. And so it's crazy because I'm like, you sometimes like as a writer, I'm like, wow, I am good. This is actually a skill. It's not as simple as knowing how to format a sentence. It's about the way you convey a story to someone that doesn't even know what's going on. Like the
mm-hmm,
way you really pull someone in and they're like, well, now I'm in a whole mystical place or I'm in someone's apartment in Brooklyn. Like the way you can kind of like tell a story and evoke emotion.
mm-hmm,
And I realize sometimes writers can have two sides of that coin, not both. So some people are really good at putting sentences together, writing a paragraph, structuring things, dialogue, all that stuff, putting the come where it belongs. Some people are not that good at that, and they just have great stories to tell. And it's a good, strong, interesting story. But sometimes when you don't have that other half of the coin, you do lose people, right? And so
mm-hmm,
that's kind of that journey of, becoming a creative writer in college, getting my degree, and then after the fact, I lived in New York originally. Now I'm in Atlanta. I met a lot of people. I was an executive assistant for a woman in production, and so I met a lot of creative people that way. And so people were like, "Oh, can you read this?" It was like little stuff, like, "Hey, can you read this for me? This screenplay, this." I would see a lot of great stories with terrible, terrible editing. I am a not talk about first drafts. First draft should never be good. I don't let that go.
mm-hmm,
But final draft, you want to submit to someone, it should be a little stronger, and it still doesn't have to be perfect, but it should be stronger. And sometimes they really weren't. And so I realized, just because you don't have a big publishing company behind your back, you do still want to put out good. You don't want the excuse to be, well, it's just me. You don't that
mm-hmm,
that, that shouldn't be an excuse. You should still put out something that is the readers don't have to dig through it and say, well, it still was good.
mm-hmm,
And so I just started pitching myself to people I would see on Amazon or even people books I read. I love, you talked about ebooks. I love ebooks. So I would see some people that would put their story out there, those like $1, $2 stories, the guilty pleasure stories, I call them sometimes.
mm-hmm,
And I would see them and I would see errors in them and I would offer like, hey, do you want me to edit this book for you? Because I think it would be a lot stronger and reach a bigger audience if the grammar wasn't, a little messed up or
mm-hmm,
confused. because it can kick someone out of story, and then people, people with short attention spans. I have one too, so
Yeah.
just trying to do that.
Totally.
So,
Well, that's definitely a thing, is like what you just said. Just because someone might be self-publishing and it's really just them working on it isn't really an excuse to put out kind of like subpar product. Like, yeah, maybe it's a little bit harder for someone to find the resources to edit, but that doesn't mean that you can't find that. And especially when you're self-publishing, you already are likely to have a little bit of like a credibility problem from self-publishing to begin with, where people will look at that and they're like, well, it didn't need to be approved or accepted by like a publishing company, therefore the contents of this book could just be like total crap, and like, let me not give it a chance just because it's an author who's self-published. Like, you're already going to face that kind of reluctance by at least some readers. So by not actually putting out a fully polished product, you're really doing yourself and kind of like all of indie publishing a disservice.
exactly.
It's just like reinforcing a stereotype that's already there.
Because I don't see Penguin Random House or anything on this book, I'm not going to pick it up. But if I finally do take the risk on a book and it's awful, it just reaffirms what I thought, that if it's not a publishing house, it's not going to be a good read, and that's not overshoot. And again, I'm not saying, I make mistakes too. On your own work, you're always going to make mistakes, because, and I told someone this on Substack, I was like, she asked like, I don't get why we can't edit our own work. I'm like, you have a blind eye when it comes to your words, because you you know what you mean, you know what you wanted to say, you know how that sentence is supposed to flow, so you'll make it up as you're reading it. You'll skim over some things because that's not the important part you're trying to get to. And so it is important to have someone edit. I get it, editors can be expensive, so I'm not telling, and I try my best to be affordable and reasonable with what I do, but it is important to invest in that part, because no matter how many times you go over it, you're gonna miss something, because you already know what you're trying to do. You'll focus on what, even like, I was terrible at world building. Like, that's a part of editing. People don't know where the desk or the table is, and that's important to immersing people in the story. And so not conveying that properly or switching it up randomly in the story, and you're like, that's not consistent, it can mess with what you're putting out. And so it is important to get someone on that work, because when you let that go, you're like, well, I read the commas there. It's like, well, okay, no, you still have to make the overall piece flows together the right way. So.
Well, you're absolutely right about how you have kind of like a blind spot for your own writing, because I know that I'm that way when I am like proofreading something that I wrote before I hand it off to someone else to do that for me and do the editing and stuff. Like, when I'm reading it and trying to kind of polish it myself to at least give them something that's not like a total mess, I will overlook things because I already sort of anticipate in my head what is about to be said. So then I am like, because I wrote it. So like, I'll just sort of skim over a problem that I didn't notice. Like, maybe I spelled something wrong, or the sentence, like the words were jumbled, or there's a typo or something like that. I tend to overlook it because I already, like, my brain's already expecting what I'm about to read. And then the other thing, not even just that, but like, you can, since like what you just said, you already know what you're trying to say. So you might not notice if what you're saying is unclear, because you kind of already know what it's trying to say. So, maybe you get it. You are the writer after all, but like, when someone else reads it, is it actually easy for them to follow? So that is something that's really important that people should really consider when they are editing. So, or having things edited or getting it ready to be edited. So I don't know, like, I was lucky, and I've said this before, but I was lucky when I was having my books edited, because I had, at least at the time, I had some friends who were working in professional publishing and like editing. So I didn't have to pay anything for it, because it was just sort of like a favor. I'm no longer in that situation. So now the next book I write, I am going to have someone, I'm probably going to have to pay someone to do that for me. But at the time, I had some people I could run to for it. So what is like the general, this is a question that is really for me, honestly. What is kind of like an average like price for when you're getting an editor and hiring an editor? Like, do they charge by like word count or like page count? Like, how does that work when you're compensating the editor that you picked out?
So an average, like if you're going for like a very professional editor, they are going to charge per word count. And I think right now the per word count charge is like 4 cents to 6 cents, depending on the total word count of your work.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's a certain amount, it'll be a little lower. Like if you're doing over 120,000 words, they'll probably charge you like 4 cents or something. But if you're doing like 50, it might be 6 cents per word. So
Mm-hmm.
it does depend on that. Some do it based on how much, like what kind, because sometimes you can edit a piece and you're just doing grammar edits, right? So you're just saying,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this format like this comma here, this word, this conjunction, all that stuff, like you format that, or you do creative development, so that sometimes costs more. So that is more so when I say, okay, yeah, Sam did not kiss Sally in the last book, we need that scene, or hey, you need to formulate this relationship better, or hey, what's the relationship with the mom, and then like, so that's when we do the creative side of like your story be concise, the theme, the messaging, all
Mm-hmm.
that stuff, character development, everything. So that can be in different price. I would say some formats, like I originally started on Fiverr. After like I was doing like word of mouth, I started on Fiverr, and sometimes people would just tell me what they want, and I would always be for like just booking them outside of the app and just say, okay, if you just want this, I can charge you this. Like for smaller stuff, I know I started doing this, and other edit friends I have do it like a chapter
Mm-hmm.
edit. So my biggest thing, like one of my biggest editing tips that I learned in my process was writing the first 4 chapters. So I would write 4 different versions of my first 4 chapters of the book, so that, because at the end of the day, the beginning is going to tell you how the rest of the book's going to go, like what you put where, what you include, who's who, what's what, like where the story's going. And so I would just tell authors, okay, I will edit the first 4 chapters and tell you what questions I have that come up, who, like, what I think about all the characters, what I think the story's going, what I think is missing, what I think needs to be explained. You might have the rest of the other chapters that you have to work through, but that could be your guide map. Because
Mm-hmm.
again, editing can be expensive. Editing can go up to like $2,500, $5,000 sometimes, depending
Oh,
on
yeah.
who. And so I'm like, if you just want the first 4 chapters, you can do it that way. I do know some people that do it for free. If you still need a free person, beta readers are a good thing, because beta readers will just tell you what they think. And if you feel confident in your editing skills and also trust other people's opinions, you can do that. I would say on average, if you're doing like a 50,000 word, which is kind of short, I would say you should expect to spend at minimum like $350 if you're
Okay.
doing grammar and creative development. But it
Mm-hmm.
also depends. Like I said, Fiverr has people that do it for like $5. I did have someone comment on my page once when I posted my professional development editing, saying I was too expensive, and like, oh, there's people on Fiverr that charge $10. I'm like, yeah, but you have to look at what you're getting, right? I can
Mm-hmm.
charge $5, $10 too. I'm not opposed to that, but you have to read, what do I get with this $5, $10? And then what do
Mm-hmm.
I get with this $1,200, $5,000? Because even with $5,000, you might get 6 revisions, right? It's not like I just read your piece once and I give it back to you. Is I give you first round of edits, you come back with your edits, I do it again. Like it's not like a one-off. And so I will be very serious about knowing what they tell you it comes with. Because some people also would charge you $5,000 and all they did was read your piece, move a comma, move a word, change a name, and send it
Mm-hmm.
back to you.
Yeah.
So it
So I'm
really all
sure
depends
this
on the
like
package.
I'm sure this probably varies a lot depending on the book that they're editing, but if someone were going to was going to hire an editor like that, you go on like Fiverr or Freelancer or something like that, and you're looking for an editor there, because I would think that that's like a fairly easy place to at least
Mhm.
find some people. Um, do people give you like a turnaround time, like at like an estimated one? They'll be like, oh, I can edit your book in like a week or two
Yeah,
weeks or a month
yeah.
or something like that. Like, is it fairly consistent, or are there like some editors who are like, oh, I can breeze right through this, and then there's other ones who are like, you got to give me some time?
No, yeah, it's like that. So it varies very much. Some editors are like, oh, tomorrow, 24 hours. And that will also depend on your word count. Like I know they'll be like, oh, 10,000 words or less this long, 30,000 words. But that's nothing too. When people say $5, you have to look at the word count. They're saying $5, but they're only doing 1,000 words. I don't know about you. I am
Mhm.
not Hemingway. I have not written anywhere near that short to be edited. And so yeah, it can vary. They can go from, I've seen people do as fast as 24 hours, and I've seen
Mhm.
people go as long as like they need a full week, if not two. And so, and that's considerate though, because sometimes it can vary. Maybe you do want someone that's going to prioritize your work and read it really fast and get it back to you, or maybe you want to be like, but take your time. Like I want to make sure what you're giving to me is long, and it also depends on them. If their editor is doing a lot of pieces, that's probably why it's taking longer,
Mhm.
right? Because if they have 4 or 5 pieces in front of you, they're not going to get to it. So they might have actually only taken a day to edit your piece, but because of
Mhm.
what they have going on, they can't get it back to you that fast, you know?
Yeah.
And So it does vary though on Fiverr and a lot of other places. Was it Red Sea? They have editing
Oh yeah,
platforms.
yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it varies.
Mm-hmm. Will some editors ask you or like require you to credit them, like in some way? Because I've seen like I didn't credit my friends who edited my books. Like they didn't ask me to. It was just kind of like, we
There
didn't
you
need
go.
to. But then I've seen other indie authors who do credit the editor, at least in like when they went and did their ISBN and stuff, they would put them as a contributor or something like that, even if they didn't necessarily list it. Like you go on Amazon and it doesn't necessarily say the editor's name right there.
Mhm.
Like, will people specifically ask that you credit them, or is that just sort of like a courtesy that you could do if you want to as the author?
I think that's a courtesy depending on who you work with. I see more often than not, especially with the higher charging ones, it's like more of a ghostwriting situation where they'll be like, you don't have
Okay.
to tell me. But I will say the editor does have the right, like on their website, to say I have edited or worked on these books. And so
Mm-hmm.
even if you don't name them, unless you have like a ghostwriting contract where obviously sometimes people aren't supposed to know, the editor will claim, well, these are the works that I have contributed to. Like I have the
Okay.
documentation. But I don't think always I haven't. I've edited
Mm-hmm.
people and I'll be like, do you? I don't really need to be
Yeah.
credited because that's fine. Especially it depends on like how much work you did. Yeah, maybe if I did revisions with you, yeah, can you say that you
Mm-hmm.
worked with me?
Yeah.
But if you send me a doc and it was like a 2 revision work, it was 50,000 words, I'm gonna be like, especially if you had to work on it after that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I haven't worked with, I have fellow editor friends that they just be like, no, it's okay, like do you. But I will claim the work on
Mm-hmm.
my page for my credibility, right? Because now I'm
Yeah.
an editor. I'm an editor. You're like, well, who you written for? I'm quiet. So
Yeah.
it's kind of more editor will claim it, but I don't think normally you don't have to do that unless there's like a contract involved
Mm-hmm.
or I worked on the whole piece with you.
Okay. So it's like it's sort of like when someone is a freelance artist or something and they want to have a
Mhm.
portfolio of the projects that they've worked on. I would think it's the same for like editors, right? Like you want to be able
Yeah.
to show these are all the things that I've done. So is it similar to the artist situation also in that like say someone is just kind of starting out doing freelance editing, they'll probably do it a little bit cheaper at the beginning just for the sake of getting kind of some books under their belt that they could show, and then maybe like as they're a little more established they can start charging more.
Charge more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's how it starts off. I mean, I started off that way. I stayed that way because also I don't, I like to write more than I like to edit. When I do edit, I'm really just trying to help because it's like books, like I said, people I've heard
Mm-hmm.
about, people I found on TikTok. I've made a really good social network on TikTok, like engaging with other writers, and so I help them. And so I don't really want to charge like an arm and a leg. Like I charge
Mm-hmm.
for my time, but I
Yeah.
don't want to charge as a whole bunch. And my goal is more so just to make the piece better, not to really like
Mm-hmm.
get that from it. So I do
Yeah.
think, yeah, when you're gonna start off, you might say $50, $100, it's fine. Just it's okay. Buy me a coffee or whatever. But once you're established, and sometimes you have to. I don't want to make it seem like some editors like, well, just because I have a name, I'm charging you more. Sometimes you have to do that because if you
Mm-hmm.
keep it cheap, people know you're good. You're gonna get overbooked, right? You're gonna get
Yeah.
overbooked, worked, and then you can't even offer your service no more. So sometimes you do have to raise the price
Mm-hmm.
because you can't stay at 50, 100, 250 and all the time. You have to, you're good at what you do. You've edited 100 books and they're bestsellers too. Like you deserve that for your work.
Mm-hmm.
But it will change once they become more established.
Okay. Well, let's talk about your own writing since you just said that you like to write more than edit. So I want to talk about Substack because
Mhm.
I don't know a thing. So you started mainly publishing on Medium, which I do use. But I only use that to like reflect the blog posts that I put on my own website. Like I just import them to Medium because I was sitting there thinking like, oh well, it's just like another way for people to maybe see the blog posts that I do. I haven't really like I don't really promote it that much, so I feel like it hasn't done super well.
That's
But
fine.
I've seen people will use Medium for more like articles, other people will use it for like fiction writing. So that's like a good spot to do that. But I know you're moving over to Substack now, and I think your goal was that you want to serial publish your novel. So
Mhm.
can you tell me, I guess let's start by talking about your experience with publishing online that way. And then I also would like to hear about your writing itself and kind of what you like to write. So let's start with the practical things though.
Okay. Well, yeah, so I did start on Medium because I've always seen like the ads and I've read stuff on there, but I never was on there as a, and then when I got on there, I think what it's like $5 a month for the subscription if you want to be paid like, for people reading it. And
Hmm.
then it just wasn't, I don't know if it's the way it looked or what the form was, but eventually I liked it at first and it was slow growing. And I, like you, I didn't promote my Medium that much and I was gaining random followers. So I did like that aspect. I like that people like found my work and gravitated toward it. And it was, I only really did it for like 2 weeks. I will say I didn't commit to it as much as I probably could have, but I didn't like the whole like charge and pay to read aspect of it. It was just
Hmm.
and so I canceled that. I heard about Substack. I think her name is Ellie Griffin. She's an author, and she did a TED talk talking about how she serial published her novel on there. And so then I went to the app just to see what that was all about. And Substack is more of like, so it's literally like a social app. I don't know, it's like a Tumblr, Twitter, blog situation where you can like post notes, which is like a tweet or whatever, and you can have your own website on there where you can work, and you can put your work behind a paywall, so that's an option, but you can have free subscribers where they just subscribe to get notifications about everything you post.
Hmm.
And you can pick the price for your subscription, so it could be $1, it could be $20, it could be whatever you want. It's monthly, or people can just donate to you, like, so they could be like, I want to give you $10 or whatever, but you get to like, it's very freeing. Like, you can just post on
Hmm.
Substack and you don't have to pay to post. Like, that's what I didn't like about Medium. You just can just post all you want, and people, it can engage, they can comment on your post, they can comment on your notes, which is, yeah, like the tweets or whatever. And it's just, right now I think I have like 14 posts on there. I've been posting, so I post like fiction stories on there. I just did my first mystery piece. It's a 2-part, about to be a
Oh,
3-part. It
cool.
was supposed to be this long. I posted a note the other day. I was like, I said I was a short story writer, but I think I'm like a long short story
Hmm.
writer because it's not long
Me
enough to be a
too.
novel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not long enough to be a novel, but it's not a
Hmm.
short story.
I always end up talking about this because I have a series of, and I'm gonna put short stories in quotes here, that accompany my like sci-fi novel, which is a long novel. And it was all supposed to be sort of a way to like expand the universe with a bunch of separate but like sort of related stories. Except I always
Mhm.
say short stories, but they're like way longer than that. But they're definitely
Yeah,
not
they're
long
like
enough to be
novellas. Yeah.
called books. Yeah. So I was reading about like word count classification and stuff, which I sort of take with a grain of salt, but they fall under what is considered a novelette, which is between a short story and a novella. And honestly, I've like never heard that word before. I'm like,
I've
what's
never
no, what
like
is a novelette? Yeah,
I
like that's yeah. So I don't know.
okay,
You
so I'm a
maybe
novelette
I
writer.
was
That's
gonna say you were a novelette writer and you
I'm a
didn't even
novelette
know
writer.
it.
Yeah. Because I'm like, I don't think these are not short stories anymore. Like, one of the part of my mystery story was like a 10-minute read. You're like, okay, fine. And then the second part is like 17 minutes. I'm like, this is not a
Hmm.
short story. So that was at 27 minutes. I'm like, this is not short at all.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so I started posting those on there. And then for the series, the serial writing, I'm doing, that's the only one on my page right now that's behind a paywall.
Hmm.
And basically I'm just, okay, this is guilty pleasure. I play Sims. And
I
so
love The
like, if you
Sims.
know, and
Yeah.
well, even though we have a very big imagination and like we make up so much dialogue and so much stuff that's obviously not in the game.
Hmm.
And so I realized I would always like call my friends and be like, so let me tell you what Margaret did to Dawn or like something. And they're like, my who are these people? But they would get engaged. And so they would tell me
Hmm.
like, you should write about it. It's so cringe. But I was like, you know what? People like cringe.
People do like cringe.
So
Yeah.
people like cringe. I was like, what's the
Hmm.
tea? So I just started. So I'm making that the chapter story because it's fun, it's playful. Yes, I take it seriously. Obviously, I am gonna make it in, but it's not something that I'm like, no, you guys have to buy my book for 16.99. Like, no,
Hmm.
it's okay. Like, I want it to be out there. I want people to read and engage with it. Yeah, I just, those are the things that are on there. So some of the short stories, novelettes that I've written over years, I'm posting. I also, it's like, it's very, you don't feel judged. Like, I
Hmm.
have made mistakes on my post, like editing grammar mistakes on my post, but I feel like that's just the place for me to get the writing out of my drafts, right? And to
Hmm.
kind of get confident in putting
Yeah.
work out there. Not to say that that work's not important or that work shouldn't be considered, but it's more so like, hey, I'm here, I write, that
Hmm.
kind of thing. So getting comfortable with pushing publish and pushing post and talking about it and not, yeah, it's, yeah, of course, I'm not opposed to any paid subscribers, but it's more so just to like have that community build up
Hmm.
the like the knowledge of my name. So when
Yeah.
I do my actual short story collection now, and I actually do put my fantasy novel out, there's people that know about me and then know
Mhm.
engage with that work because they like my other work, you know.
I almost
But that's
think
the
of it
experience I've had.
like, when like comedians who are starting out will like do open mic night and stuff like that and sort of
Mhm.
perfect their act. And like it doesn't always land great. It's not perfect, but like they're kind of getting their name out there while at the same time like building up their own confidence and like perfecting their work basically. I kind of think of it that way, right? Like obviously you're not you're trying to put stuff out on Substack that is going to be like entertaining, so it's not like you're just putting anything up, but like you at the same time like you don't have to feel too bad if it's not like absolute perfection because it is sort of a way for you to build a
Like baby
community.
steps.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then it reminds me a little bit of Kindle Vella, like which my friend. So my friend was telling me about this, and I made a video about it because I didn't know a thing about this. But I guess like KDP, like Amazon, lets you self-publish like serial stories
Oh
now.
yeah.
Yeah, and she did like pretty well with it actually, and got a good number of people to pay attention. And she had started out on, I don't think it was Substack, but it was something like that, like maybe like Wattpad or something.
Might
And
have been.
yeah, and she got a little bit of traction there. So then she was like, oh, well, let me move over to Amazon and then see how that goes. So like that might be an option for you down the line if you ever want to like look into it, because you can do like fairly well with it in terms of actually like getting paid for it. So
That's it. I'll look
I've
into
never looked into it that much just because I can't write short enough for that. But
it.
like there's no way. And like not even just that, but I feel like you need to be good at like setting a schedule for yourself, and I am horrible at that. The fact
I
that it
would
took
say
me
that's
like
something
2 weeks to
to
answer your email is proof of that. So yeah, it's not my thing. Like I'm not good at keeping a
But
schedule.
that's what I did on Substack. So I made so I also do a little blog. Like it's called the, I think I told you just to call your stuff the Whining Writer
Hmm.
blog. And so basically I made I'm doing a commitment test right now. So I'm scheduling to post every Wednesday a blog post and every Friday a fiction story. But
Hmm.
I'm scheduling them so whatever's in there when
Yeah.
that time comes is what's gonna go out. Because it's
Hmm.
for free too, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
maybe you only get the first 500 words. That's what you're getting. But the point is that I'm putting work out there. Like
Hmm.
I want stuff to be out there, and it allows you to edit. I want to go in and make the story longer. I can go
Hmm.
in and make the story longer. I can tell people, hey, the story has been extended. Check it out. But the point is to have the work going, because I feel like the biggest setback for writers is like, wait, it's not good enough yet. It's not finished. It's not
Oh
done. And of
yeah.
course, you
Hmm.
want it to go out finished and done, but sometimes you can share a snippet. Also, my biggest setback was I don't want no one to steal my stuff. And it's like, no, the writing community so far is a pretty safe space. No one's gonna steal your stuff. They might be inspired by it, right? So they might
Hmm.
make a story that's similar, or it might have the line in it, but no one can write what you write or make what you make. No one can, it's you, right? Writing is
Yeah.
very, you cannot replicate that in a sense. You can
Hmm.
build off, you can expand. How many people write fake fan faked off of so many shows, but it's still not the show. You know, sometimes it's better, sometimes
Hmm.
it's worse. But like you can never redo something and not have people be like, oh, that's this, right? So if
Yeah.
anybody does try to do my work, someone's gonna say, oh, that's this, and that's gonna be found out pretty easily. So it's just getting over that fear of putting something out there that, oh, it might be subpar, they might not like it. Oh well,
Hmm.
7 million people, someone's not gonna like it.
Yeah.
Someone's not
No,
even gonna buy it.
inevitably. Like that'll always happen. Like that's true of anything. And like that's why like someone like that was a tough thing for me when I was starting out, that like I'm the kind of person that wants everyone to like them. I'm like obsessed with that. Like any social situation I'm in, I am like constantly trying to frame myself in a way where I'm like, people don't have a whole lot to criticize. It's always like, oh, he's a nice guy. And like that's it. So the idea, because I just always need that. And I think it's because I'm the child of divorced parents and I always want everyone around me to
Oh,
be happy.
yeah.
So I think that's probably where it stems from. But when it comes to my own work, like creatively, it was hard for me at one point to accept that it's not always going to be universally praised by everyone, because I'm the type of person that feels like they need everyone to approve of them. So
It's
like
like,
that was, yeah, that was like a tough lesson to learn when you realize, you know what, like your book doesn't need to be terrible for people to not like it. It could just be that their own personal taste, it just doesn't align with that. Like, and that's
not
totally
like,
fine. Like that's just life. Everyone likes different things, and they're not always gonna like what you write. And even if they're not just like, even if they're not saying like, oh, it was a bad book, they're just like, oh, it was a decent book, I just personally didn't like it, you
careful.
know?
Good
Yeah.
writing doesn't mean it's gonna be like so everyone's cup of tea. It can be a great piece of writing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it is everyone's gonna like it. And I will say one thing, or like I guess kind of tip for other writers or anybody that watches this, like my first short story that I wrote was called Puto on the Block, and it was written in first person from this character I created called Hector. And Hector was basically like a sex addict narcissist kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
How did I make I don't know. But and I wrote it. It was like the first story I wrote in one sitting. Obviously, it was hard both the first draft, but I did finish the full story in one sitting. I loved the story so much, and I worked hard on it. And I read it for my senior reading, and people loved it. They were like obsessed, and oh my god, Maya, such a good story, so amazing. And I'm like, oh, you love it so much. Okay, yeah, I'm so good. I'm so people that I didn't even know. It wasn't like friends.
Mm-hmm.
It was like people was very big. Like, oh yeah, I'm so excited. And I couldn't write after that for like almost a year because everything I tried to start sucked in my head. Like
Yeah.
everything I tried to do again, everything I tried to say, this is going to be a great story was like falling flat. It had like I couldn't even get through the first page
Mm-hmm.
of writing. I had so many non-finished things from that moment. And it like took me a very long time to write again because I was so afraid that people had such high expectations from me.
Yeah.
Mind you, there are a lot of people 50 maybe that's a
Mm-hmm.
lot, it is a lot.
That is a lot of
But
people.
also
Yeah.
it was a small group of people,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they might
Yeah.
have all of that work, but I could have read to a different group of people that didn't like it,
Mm-hmm.
but they might have liked something else I was working on. And
Mm-hmm.
so but I got so stuck in that mindset of like those 50 people loved what I did, so I have to make sure the next thing I do is like 20 times better and
Mm-hmm.
like the best thing ever written. And it hindered, me in my creative process because I wasn't really
Absolutely.
having anything I was putting out there. And I see that a lot of times and a lot of people that I work with or talk to like other writers, like you're just like, well, it has to be this. I'm like, well, honestly, it doesn't. Not to be a hypocrite because I had the same fear, but like
Mm-hmm.
it really doesn't. And until you let go of that, oh, everyone has to like it or it has to beat what I did last time, like until you let go of that, it's gonna be a very draining journey trying to write something down on a
Mm-hmm.
piece of paper.
Well, when you
That's all my tip.
you end up like setting the bar so high that it's like unrealistic, and it just turns into like almost an excuse to not actually write anything, because you're like, you look at it and you're like, well, I'm only going to spend my time on something that I know is going to surpass what I've already written. And like a lot of the time that's all in your head. So yeah, so that kind of thing really can hold you back. Well, we're sort of short on time now, but I want to thank you for giving some editing tips, because that's something that I know a lot of people have difficulty finding, or are just
Yeah.
not really sure where to start when it comes to finding an
I have
editor.
one.
Mm-hmm.
I have one just for
Yeah,
editing yourself.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like just remember, I want people to remember like the narrator and the character is not the author.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're writing from a perspective, even if you're like, this is the right way to say this or form a dialogue, you're talking from a different voice. So
Mm-hmm.
people are going to understand that. So if your character is immature and talks slow and slurs her words or says like a lot, let them do that. And then even for the narrator should have more clean dialogue, but that's still not you. So it doesn't have to sound like a perfect person. The narrator can have some personality. That goes more to
Thank
the
you
third
for
person.
thank you for saying that, because I swear, so my that I relate to that so profoundly. Sorry, I just got like this burst of energy. So
You're like,
I
oh yes,
no,
finally.
thank you. So like my novel Devils in Sunday Hats, that's my better one of the two that I've written. I personally think that it's the better one. But that is written, it's written largely in like Southern dialect. So it's like a lot of improper grammar and stuff. Like if you're looking at it just from a purely like, oh, this is like proper English grammar. Obviously, these are like regional variants. So like the dialogue is very dialect. But then I also
Mm-hmm.
went as far as to not like to the same degree, but the narration itself sort of fits that, in that it's not super formal. Like, I do actually throw a good amount of crass language into the narration itself because it made sense for the book. Like, it would have been weird if it was like the characters are speaking in a very, very dialect sort of way that is very variant from like standard American English, but then have narration that is like super formal and clean, and like it just would have been like, I almost feel like it would have seemed like I was making fun of the characters, like, and making it out like they were like talking like stupid people if I had had the narration be so opposite of the way that they talk. So just thank you for saying that, because I write similarly to that, and I feel like there's a lot of people that I've seen, like people who are starting out at least in writing, who feel that the narration has to be a perfectly cleaned up and, you know, just like very formal version of their own speech. And it's just like, I just don't feel it needs to be that way. So thank you. I appreciate that.
It doesn't have to. Yeah, no, it doesn't. That's one of the biggest things I see too. I'm like, you pay to let your characters be themselves and let your narrator be them. If they talk at a temporary letter, they talk at a temporary letter. It doesn't mean you're writing at one. It means your
Mm-hmm.
character, or even your narrator, like that's unreliable narrator.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they maybe they are jealous of whoever they're talking about. Like, you can put a little, if it makes sense for your story, if your writing explains that, it'll be read. Don't feel forced to make this perfectly written, dialogue or whatever. I will
Mm-hmm.
say that. I will say, I also want to say I am releasing a workbook for writers, for self-publishing writers, in
Oh,
August.
awesome.
It's called Miscellaneous, but Miss short.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna have prompts in it, as well as like the big things like style, theme, regular grammar stuff, characterization. I hate that word.
Mm-hmm.
All that stuff, like a quick little tidbit, and then some prompts to work through in
Mm-hmm.
it for non-publishing authors. Because again, not everybody can afford editing, and it's just the key things that I see that struggle them through it. So I think it would help a lot of people to just have that. Because I got a creative writing degree, but not everybody did. Some people go to school, but it doesn't mean you can't be a writer. And
Mm-hmm.
so I do feel like there needs to be more stuff that's like, okay, yeah, maybe I am an anthropologist, but I want to write a story about penguins or something. I don't know, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So just allowing people to have access to that. So I will be putting that out in August. I'll send it to you when it's out. It'll be on Amazon. I don't
Cool.
know. I haven't
Yeah,
decided
I was
yet.
gonna say, send me the link for it when it's out, and I'll put it in the description of this video, because I think that would be a really good resource for people. So that's cool that you're doing that. So yeah, I'm gonna encourage everyone to go check that out. So yeah, everyone, thank you for watching. This has been Maiah Lynnette with me, who is really easy to talk to. So thank you for being here. I'm going to put links to Maiah's Substack and maybe some of her Medium stuff if it hasn't been migrated over to Substack. So I will put those links below. And also, if you're looking for an editor, it sounds like Maiah might be able to help you out. So yeah, so reach out to Maiah if you're looking for some editing services. But thank you so much, Maiah, for being here. I really, really appreciate it. And it was cool to hear some tips about a subject that seems to be consistently an issue for new indie authors.
No problem. Thank you for having me. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
of course. So everyone stay tuned for next week's episode. Make sure you subscribe so we can keep supporting more indie authors out there. So until next time, thanks so much for your support, everyone, and God bless you all.